Thanks everybody for being here. Welcome to our Riding Han live stream Q&A with Pak here, the filmmaker from Riding Han. Hayden on the marketing team of Adventure Cycling is going to help moderate any questions that you have. And my name is Jeffrey Reinzel, and I work in the programming side of things here at Adventure Cycling. And I was just saying before we started recording that this is our first ever live stream that includes a live Q&A. We've done a couple of live streams so far, one about the USBRS, the US Bicycle Route System, with our Director of Routes, Jen Hamelman, and that was more of like an information session. And then a similar one about our Short Routes program with our former Short Routes program manager, Nathan Taylor. That was kind of a how to submit your own short route. So go check those out, but this is the first time that we're actually going to be able to have sort of live interaction, and we are very happy to have Pak here as our first guinea pig. We had a minor technical hiccup. It was before we started recording, so it doesn't count. And yeah, so I'm just going to give a super quick background, Pak, and then you can give any more details that you like. I love your intro for what I'm going to say about you. Quick and to the point. It's great. But a couple years ago, our Adventure Cycling, I'll just say, has a very concerted interest or a concerted effort to make sure that we're telling the stories of the adventure that we're helping to facilitate. And we wanted to help support Pak in the production of this film and then helping him put it out. So he's obviously been to film festivals all across the country, and we actually had a live event with him in Missoula at the Roxy Theater, where he was gracious enough to drive out 6 or 7 hours, was it?
Yeah, something like that.
6, 7 hours to come out just for the day to do a live event and meet Adventure Cycling members in person. But the film, as you know, is about the Great Divide mountain bike route, one of our premier routes, and in my opinion, the premier off-road route in the world. And his journey with a couple of friends, or a friend and a brother, to ride south to north on the Great Divide mountain bike route. So Pak is here. I'm going to make sure that I read it correctly. Pak is a Korean American filmmaker, and his main descriptor for himself, I said, Pak, tell me how you want to be introduced. And he said, just say he enjoys being clipped in with his Crocs. So that's going to be my first question is, how literal is that? And give us more background on just sort of your journey. And then anybody in the comment section, feel free to drop in your questions.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to say Crocs are the most superior form of footwear. I will stand by that statement, and nobody can say otherwise because you can't say anything, and I can't
Did you
hear.
wear
So,
Crocs today?
did I wear Crocs? I did wear Crocs today.
100%. Great. At least you're true to yourself.
Yes. And I guess kind of why I said that was for me, cycling is something that, or at least traveling by bike is something that I don't really take super seriously. It's just like a way for me to explore the world and take, I guess, seeing the in between is how I say it. There's a destination point B and you start at point A, and I like to see slowly, sometimes fast like on a mountain bike, but um, yeah, I think just wearing Crocs and just going for a ride, whether it's the divide or anywhere, is just brings me so much joy. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I think we did wear Crocs. I'd say I wore Crocs like 95% of the divide. There was made two sections that were really, really bad. I don't know if anyone in the audience has ridden the divide, but there is a two parts that have like massive boulder like stones, and then another it just rained a lot and it was super muddy. And my Crocs, by the end of the trip, they had no grip, and then the pins were like going through. I could feel the pins on my feet. So I was super safe.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so did you just put screws in there, or how did you actually attach the cleats?
Oh no, I didn't put any screws in
Okay, you didn't
there.
actually clip them in. Okay.
No,
Okay.
didn't wear any cleats. I had a pair of shoes, and then yeah, all three of us mainly wore Crocs the whole time. Um, Hence superior. Yeah.
Okay, well, I
Should
mean,
I?
I've got a couple questions, but there's a couple in
Okay.
here. Hayden, do you mind just popping one in there for him? We're calling it out.
You want me to pop the questions in the chat?
Or no, if you just wanted to the ones as they're coming in, just kind of read them out to Tupac.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll save Drew. I loved your question that you asked just before we got started, and it's okay with you. Let's save it for the end. I think that'll be a fun one to chat about, don't you think? Or do you want to do that one now, Jeffrey?
Um, I mean, it is very interesting. I think maybe
Okay, let's
here,
do
actually, you
it.
know what? I'll ask some of my questions, and Drew, this isn't to step on you. Um, Anybody who's watching this video is going to be like, "Who the heck is Drew?" He's just our number one fan, obviously. But some of my questions are more like introductory, like kind of like the background of the film. So we'll do some of those first, and then Drew, we're gonna hit your question. Don't worry about it. But I would love to know about your motivation for the film, making films in general. I know that you've made more than just this one. Why a cycling film? And then how did you choose the route?
Yeah. So Jeffrey, I'm actually gonna correct you on that. This is actually my first film. I made a film like close to maybe 15 years ago, but that doesn't
Okay.
count.
Okay.
I was like way back in high school. Um, and kind of like my initial motivation of making Writing Han was I was just looking for inspiration on the divide online. And it was kind of disappointing because I just saw a lot of endurance riders or YouTubers, and those are like two groups that I can't really relate to.
Yeah.
They are inspiring, but after a while, seeing someone race a divide, it kind of gets, it gets less inspiring as the years go on, and I feel like it's kind of really been overdone. And I kind of just wanted to make a story, make a film of not only of like marginalized voices, but like novices. My little brother and young have never bike packed or biked for more than like 10 miles, and kind of a different perspective of the divide film. And more of the population that most people can relate to, just like newbies or people who just enjoy riding bikes and bike packing just casually. Um, I feel like nowadays outdoor films are kind of too, what do you say? I guess focus on the destination, have a lot of beautiful cinematography, extreme
Sure.
athletes over like the journey or the I guess the story. And I guess personally for me, when I'm watching a film, I really want to know how the characters are struggling not only within this like adventure or this journey, but like outside of the expedition as well, because that really affects, the journey itself. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally hear that, especially for adventure cycling, because like we're not a race-based organization. Obviously, the Tour Divide race oftentimes like shouts us out and says sort of like, thanks for the historical like, creation of the Great Divide mountain bike route, but even the racing route doesn't align with it perfectly. But what we're trying to do is make it so it's accessible to anyone. And
Yeah.
your film, I think perfectly encapsulates that, especially like with the young scene when he's talking about his bike that you found, I think. Maybe tell us that story. But if I recall, he made it all the way through New Mexico on that bike. So it
Yep.
wasn't like the first day. It was like the first, 2 weeks that he rode on that thing. Am I right?
Yeah. No, I found this bike when I was living in Tucson. Someone just left a random bike in my like laundry unit, and that's the only. It was the laundry unit was only for me, but even though it's kind of like open to the world, but so I just like nabbed that, be like, hey, that'd be a perfect bike for Young. I didn't know if Young was actually going to come on the trip then. But yeah, he rode this like really old school 26-inch, not really ratty bike that I kind of attached a basket to the front. Um, and yeah, it made it through, barely made it through the desert. And we got to the border of Arizona and New Mexico. It was like over 100 degrees, and he took a really nasty fall, and the pretty much the wheel got tacoed. And so we had to hitchhike like, I don't know, 50 miles to Silver City. Um, but yeah, he's
Yeah.
just a normal dude who didn't know how to bike pack, and just
Right.
we went for it.
Right. But it just goes to show that it's, it's for everybody. If you have sort of that the will or the drive to do
Yeah.
it. Generally I wouldn't ask this question because I do want to focus it on the film. However, I do know that adventure cycling members are quite fond of gear and equipment talk outside of the one that you found in the laundry room. What kind of gear were you prepared with? And did you feel like you were prepared with your gear? What were you on? What did you like? And did you feel like you were missing anything? Like if you went back, were you like, I have to have this next time?
Um, yeah, I think gear wise, after working in the outdoor industry for almost a decade as a guide, I have it pretty dialed. So I think I was more worried about, does Matthew, my little brother, and Young have everything? Um, and for me, I was just, for the bike nerds out there, I was writing was it a crust? Wow, why can't I was writing a crust, and I for my little brother, I just gave him my salsa timberjack. It's a hardtail, and Young was he had that 26-inch um vintage mountain bike, which you'll see in the film. Things progress and get better. Um, but I think we had a lot of film gear. We so it was like more significant load than usual. Um, than I would normally take. But I'd say like pretty instrumental pieces of gear. I think a lot of people may have seen like the Ombra sunglasses. They like the armless sunglasses that you can't really break.
Right.
And so we all three of us, they were supporters of ours. Pretty much never took them off. I slept with those all the time on. I don't remember ever taking them off really on the trip. For me, I just have really sensitive eyes to the sun, so those were helpful. And then I guess my underrated piece of gear is like a bidet, and it's a bidet by Kulo Clean, and a set pretty much you can attach it to any like um the smart water bottle or anything with the that particular diameter, which is in a lot of bottles. I like to be clean out there. I think staying clean could be a challenge. Um, so I always put it in my poop kit. So there would be like a trowel, the little bidet thing, and then small container of Bronners, you know, in case of any emergencies, which I
That's
did
not like what
have.
I expected you to go with, but it is a good tip and I do appreciate it.
I have a question from Drew that might be relevant. He's talking about the equipment. He said there are many online videos coming out about the Divide route, Lachlan, Morton, others. Many are shot with various types of equipment. Have you ever been able to see any of them recently, and thoughts on how your style differs from theirs or other documentaries? So just you talking about the gear that you brought out there while
Yeah.
you were shooting, like, yeah, have you seen others, and how do they differ or compare?
Honestly, I haven't watched too many in recent years. I feel like the last one I've watched was Lil Wilcox's, but initially I had talks with Pearl Izumi about the film, um, and how we wanted to collaborate. And I guess the reason why they decided to go with my film is a lot of the other films that they wanted other people pitched, they needed or they requested a camera crew, and we absolutely didn't want to do that. We wanted it to be as verite as possible, um, and we wanted to be it as real as possible. As it's kind of difficult, or not kind of, but it's just different when you are just like a solo shooter, where and it's kind of hard to pull off that verite style of like if you don't have someone who's shooting for you. Young, my best friend, he was the primary video shooter. And so we pretty much just had two mirrorless cameras. I had a drone, and I think maybe two GoPros. But yeah, I can't say, I feel like comparing films that are just solo YouTubers versus other people who have camera crews versus ours, or we're just shooting it ourselves, just extremely different, with the support, different variants of support, and just like, I guess, the limitations that you have from shooting it with support or not. So yeah, I can't really say I've seen too many, and how my styles kind of differ, but I think because I was the director and I pretty much had 100% creative control, I was able to not be very influenced, or had a certain kind of things I had to hit with the people who were supporting like adventure cycling. They really left it up to me to make this film however I wanted to. So
Yeah, Drew's got another kind of follow-up question to that. He says, as a photojournalist myself, I sometimes feel stopping and shooting takes away from the ride itself. Do you feel that is the case for you, or do you feel like that capturing video is part of the ride now?
um hmm. After I guess after doing this trip, I don't really have any desire to film do another film when I'm riding with friends. Um, it kind of it was pretty stressful as this was my first film, so I had a lot of pressure of how am I gonna do this film? I don't know what's gonna happen. Taking care of my little brother who was 17 at the time, and another one shepherding two new cyclists. Um, yeah, I guess it was there was a lot of um and I think most of this pressure was my own internal pressures that I was giving myself. Um and but I am so glad that I decided to memorialize this trip into a film. But I wouldn't say like capturing video is part of um why I want to ride anymore, or I guess why I wanted to do the ride now. Um yeah, I think that in the future I do want to incorporate more expeditions that I do myself, um or create more films that I'm also part of it, but I don't really want to be in the films that I create in the future. So yeah,
So I guess implied
I
in that is it does in some way take away from it for you.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yes, I
Would you
agree.
be interested, like your reasons for having the stress? Like it is stress. Like I've biked with my parents, and I do feel like I'm shepherding children. Like I don't want my mom to fall. She always hurts herself. I don't want my dad to go off wherever. So like if you had more experienced like riding partners,
Yes, I
that
guess that would
that
also
that
change
would
it.
make a big difference for you then. Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, I'd say maybe like if now that I know Young is like is solid as a bike packer, I'd be more up up for taking up for doing
Yeah.
it.
I would love to ask about the crew. Just about obviously your brother is your brother, Young is your best friend, who you grew up with, right? So I
Mhm.
mean, I just maybe talk about that dynamic, how you even brought it up to them. Were they open to it at first? And
Yeah.
a question that I actually really have about your brother is like, did you have to clear it with your mom? Like, was your mom kind of on you about like, hey, take care of Matthew?
Yeah. Oh man, where to start? I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it was very difficult, especially with the brother dynamic. Um, my little brother, just to give you all some context, he's a very introverted individual, and it's hard to get him to open up. There's a pretty big age gap of almost 15 years, and he sees me more like a father figure. Um, and he's also part of like the Gen Z population where he was definitely stunted by the pandemic, um, learning how to, I guess, socially and emotionally. So he's the type of guy who would spend days in his like cave and never leave. so that kind of made it challenging, as I wanted to go on this trip so I can get to know him better, but uh yeah, I guess maybe I was just giving him too much crap, being an older brother and all. So he didn't open up as much as I wanted him to, which is okay. I no regrets, but I can like see now, like, 2 years later, like how much of a difference this trip has like helped his confidence and all. Um, and not only that, he's a very slow person in general. Just the way he moves through life, he's just a very chill guy, and that also translates into biking. So he's a very slow biker. And Young and I, my friend, we would constantly have to wait for him. And every single time we were waiting, I'm in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, I hope he's okay, just for his safety and well-being as his older brother. So there was also that constant stress of like, oh man, he hasn't been here in like 10 minutes. I hope he's okay. Um, yeah. And as for like uh pretty much I dragged him along and I had to convince my parents, like, hey, um, I'm gonna take Matthew on this trip. I think he needs it. Look at him. He's been stuck at home for 2 years. Um, he needs to really see the world and experience, you know, talking with people and being in the real world. So they eventually caved in. They were very hesitant at first. Um, but I've been talking about this trip since like 2015. And I'd let them know like 7 years beforehand that Matthew and I were going no matter what you say. Um,
Did you have to convince him at all?
he wasn't really, he didn't really say no. At all. He was just
Very little
like, yeah,
brotherly
sure, it's a
thing.
yeah, it's a free trip. My brother's paying for everything, so let's just do it.
Good for him. That's cool though. Like
Yeah.
like as you describe him, to take such like a big challenge, like to do such something so different, like outside of his comfort zone and challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Yeah, a lot of people that were riding the divide were very jealous of him. It's like, oh, I wish I had an older brother like that who would take me on a trip. I'm like, yeah, me too.
We've got another question here. How did other cyclists, if you saw any along the route, how did they interact with you when you were shooting? Did they find spontaneous interviews came easy? And he says, I haven't seen the film, of course. Or
Hmm.
did you just try to shoot candidly, and little connections with others?
Yeah. How do they interact with you while you were shooting? We honestly didn't. I guess before I had the concept of writing Han, um, I reached out to a few people that I knew were writing the divide. And unfortunately, I was only able to meet one of them. And beforehand, I had plans to like, oh, I'm gonna do like a formal interview with all these people. Um, but drastically, as we went on this trip, the story really changed from what I thought it was gonna be. And so we didn't really shoot too many other writers. We shot more people outside of the divide, which was more interesting. I think we didn't use too much of the footage of others, but I guess the key people that we met along the way, as writing Han and Han is like a Korean word, for those who haven't watched it, which it's a spectrum of, and this is just my own subjective definition, as it's different for every Korean person, but it's a spectrum of emotion one feels um, or experiences through generational personal trauma. And um, we really the people that we did include in the film were um, kind of like the spontaneous people and like kind of like Korean adjacent um, experiences that we got along the way, which were like a lot more than I thought, which was crazy. Um, and so yeah, I guess we didn't really shoot too many of the um people who were going southbound. We just chatted with a bunch, but yeah, we didn't really shoot any of them.
Um, can I take this opportunity to dig into Hans specifically a little bit
Yeah.
more? I know obviously, like you're saying, it is different for each Korean person. Um, and I don't know, actually, I took the time now that after I sort of found out, I had heard about it honestly, and this is gonna, I had heard about it. There's an episode of The West Wing, amazing show called Han, and
Oh,
I found
really?
out about it there.
West Wing.
And whenever you described it, sort of about the intergenerational trauma that Korean people have faced historically. I think I told you this, Pak. I had been doing similar digging for my background. I'm Filipino.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's a very similar thing, and I'm trying to determine if there's something similar to Han in the Philippines. But
Mm.
I would love to dig into it as it relates to your personal life, if possible, because I would love to know about the opening scene.
Yeah.
If you're willing to talk about it. I mean, unfortunately, um, Drew hasn't been able to see it, but it's not a secret for the people who did get to watch it, if you're okay talking about it. But how that opening scene relates to the ride, relates to your understanding of Han. Obviously, it was during COVID, all of those things kind of mixed
Yeah,
up. How did that like maybe represent Han for you in a greater context throughout the
for
film?
sure.
And if you're
I
comfortable, could you like describe
yeah.
the first scene?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I guess for those of you who haven't seen the opening scene, I guess it's a very vulnerable and just a really raw scene of me just talking at the camera. And it was pretty soon after that I found out that my mother was assaulted on the Atlanta subway, and I was across the country in Tucson, Arizona. And it was like a racially motivated assault. And this was like 2, 3 weeks after the divide, and um, for many months I decided to keep that particular scene out of the film, and it was mainly just because I wrestled with like being so vulnerable and exposed, sharing my feelings on the camera. um but I guess throughout the like year that I and some change that I spent editing it, it just felt like something was missing. The film was incomplete, and I think starting with this scene, and I'll share the link at the end, is um I think it really sets the intention of what I wanted the film to be. Um and kind of showing that, that this journey and any journey, it's not, for me, I feel like it's not just about the adventure, but like um as an adventure cyclist, but as a human being. I think that there's a lot more going on than just like in outdoor films and just like this expedition or anything that's happening. I think life still happens outside of that, and I I I believe that it should also bleed into it as well. And I think that that experience and reflecting on, what happened to my mother, it represents Han as, it really reminded me that, my immigrant parents, my ancestors really, struggled post-war Korea in order for me to have the freedom that I have here in the States. And yeah, I really think that it opened up my eyes to, and it gave me like a stronger, more creative force or creative fire that I really wanted to complete this film. And I, yeah, just like kind of kept that in the back of my mind, and was like the driving force behind, finishing the story that I started.
Yeah. And the last part of that is sort of my next question is obviously when somebody does a long distance ride like this, or people who go on ultra runs or bike across the country in the Trans Am, often are doing it to have some sort of like, introspective time, or to process something.
Mm.
You're also simultaneously in charge of creating a film. So do you feel like you were able to like stop and reflect on uh Han in your life or your family's life, or process something that perhaps if that was your goal, or do you feel like you were distracted making the film and that was like your experience of it?
And you're talking just within writing the divide?
Like actually writing on it.
Yeah.
You're like, I want to
I
tell a story about Han, but were you even
yeah.
able to think about it, or were you so busy,
Yeah. At
with the
first it
camera?
was, yeah, there was just so much stress about this film and then shepherding the other two, that there wasn't much thought. But as you'll see in the film, these like I don't know, these like creative forces kind of manifested all of these Korean related experiences, which I in my like since bike, traveling by bike and since 2013, I've never had any of these experiences. And then suddenly all these experiences manifesting themselves while we're creating this like Korean adjacent adventure cycling film. It was like there I would say those particular like 5, 6 moments really made me reflect on like not only, not just the film, but what does Han mean to me? And it really helped evolve like and solidify the meaning of what Han means to me and made it a lot more impactful.
So those things kind of were able to bring it back to your forefront, if you may have sort of like,
Yeah.
if it may have taken second place to like, I need to actually create this film.
Mm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
cool. We have a couple more people here. So if you do have questions for Pak, if you're able to see the film or if you haven't yet, that's totally fine too. Just drop them here into the chat and Hayden will let us know once you've been able to ask your question. Um, Pak, I would love to know about, I mentioned in my very first question was like, why this route? And you kind of said like you were just researching the Great Divide, but never necessarily a why. Is there a why on the Great Divide?
Mm.
And do you have other long distance cycling goals or other routes that you would like to do along the adventure cycling route network or elsewhere?
Mm. Uh, Yeah, why the divide? Well, originally I was thinking internationally, back in 2015 when I just had like the concept of doing a bike trip with my brother. But obviously the pandemic was a big factor and so we had to stay in the States. I chose to divide specifically because I wanted something more challenging for my little brother. Um, he spent some time in the outdoors with me backpacking, but not to this extent for like weeks and months. And as for Young, my best friend, he's never camped or been in the backcountry, so he spent most of his or all of his adult years in New York City. So like being able to showcase the vastness and variety that this country really offers was kind of something I wanted to expose to both of them. Um, as yeah, neither of them really been in the center of the country. And yeah, they got to see a lot how I guess the diversity of America of um yeah, of how how people live and exist in this continent. Um, it was really cool to see them witness like, wow, this is how people live, in all sorts of aspects and all in all these places, the kindness that we um, were met with, even though we're very different people.
Right.
Um, yeah, it just gave like a sense of humanity.
Yeah. Do you have other routes that you're eyeing at the moment?
Um, I can't remember if is the Idaho Hot Springs an
That's an
adventure cycling
ACR.
route?
Yep. That's an
Okay,
adventure cycling route.
that yeah, I would love to do that.
And it doesn't take as long as the Great Divide.
Yes, definitely not. Right now it is not an ACA route, but I would like to do the Western Wildlands. I don't know when they'll be, but that kind of I think parallels a little bit west to the divide. And it's through bikepacking routes, another
Yep.
supporter of the film. But yeah, I think that's the one that is the one I'm eyeing sometime in the future. Yeah.
Cool. Hayden, did a couple come
Yeah.
in?
The hot
Oh,
springs
just
route.
Miles saying hey, he would love to do the Idaho hot spur. They would love to do the Idaho hot springs as well, and ditto, especially this cold weather. That sounds soaking in springs all day and riding my bike sounds dreamy.
I feel like doing that in the winter would be awesome, just like on a fat bike. Ooh, just
I
getting to
wonder
that
how
at the end of
tough,
the
like
day.
from what I've read, it you like when you read on our website, I think that they recommend you're pretty experienced for
Hmm.
this route because it is so like I don't know if remote's the right word, but I can't imagine if they're saying that now. I can only imagine the difficulty with
Yeah.
snow. But
Maybe
sounds
reach out to the
really
adventure
cool.
cycling routes department. Reach out to the routes department before you actually go try it in the winter. Puck, I'm gonna go back up to the top. Drew, I promised you we would do it. Drew had a question. I worked in TV all my career, retired during COVID. Congrats on the retirement. Love to hear your most challenging shooting stories. Biking related, of course.
Let's see. Biking related. I guess the most challenging one. Hmm. There were a lot of drone shots of me trying to fit all three of us riding towards the drone and me controlling it and me acting like I'm not controlling it, just being like,
Sure.
oh, I'm
Yeah.
not the operator, but also trying not to crash it. Those were probably like the most technically difficult. Um, Trying to think any other um hmm. I think just the most challenging part was me trying to make it as verite as possible. And I guess verite meaning kind of being the fly on the wall. And after creating the film, it isn't as much as I wanted it to be, but I think the moments that we did get were pure magic. I actually made like a secondary trailer, which I dub the real trailer that nobody has watched and haven't released yet, but will release. Um, yeah, there were okay, some of the like very random spontaneous moments, especially like the Korean related moments, were a little bit challenging as we were trying to capture the essence of the moment, but not ruining it, especially with interviewing Mr. Kim, which you'll see in the film. So it wasn't as successful as we wanted it to, as there were um, some technical difficulties. So we didn't get the angle that we wanted or whatever, but we got the audio, which is more important, um, and was able to use it, I think, in a pretty good way in the film.
We've got another question here from Mark. Have you reflected on the quality of your time spent on the bike versus experiences off the bike?
Quality of your time. And Mark, are you in general, or are you talking about just on this trip?
Or you mean like bike packing experiences versus like you mentioned backpacking? Is that also what is like
Mm,
bike packing versus? If you could clarify that, Mark, just a bit.
it's a good question though. On this
Oh,
trip,
Oh,
okay.
okay.
Hmm. Hmm. I I think this is a hard one for me to answer because I feel like every time we were off the bike, I was had was constantly had these stresses of like finishing this film, or like especially in the beginning, I was like, what the hell am I gonna do with this film? I don't know what's gonna happen, but that's just the magic of documentary. Um, I think that having Having Young there, my friend, I think that he's a very I dub him like the philosopher, and we really had such a great time, chatting about the world, chatting about us, chatting about everything. And I think that I say the majority of my bike packing trips have been solo. So a lot of the time has been spent in introspection, and a lot of those things even get lost in memory. And I think that and I actually do prefer, even just in traveling in general or on bicycle, that I'd rather uh, be able to share these memories with somebody else. Hence why I wanted to take my brother on this trip instead of doing it myself. Yeah, but the quality of time. Yeah, I would need to think on that a little more, Mark. Yeah.
Was there ever a point, obviously, you're saying when you weren't on the bike, you were stressed about taking care of them or creating the film or thinking about the next shot? Were there at least moments on the bike where you were able to just enjoy being on the bike and look at the beautiful scenery and say, I'm not filming for 2 hours and I'm just
Hmm.
gonna enjoy pedaling my bike? Or were you stressed the whole time?
Yeah, I would say not the whole time, thankfully. I would say there was a moment in the trip. Um, we were somewhere in New Mexico. After biking like a week and a half in over 100 degrees, we made it to the Gila and we finally had shade. There was a moment where we were like maybe 3 or 4 weeks in and we were still in New Mexico. And I was just like, you know what? And I, talked to everyone. It's like, I don't think we're gonna make it to Canada. So whatever, screw it, whatever happens, happens. And at that point, before that, I was I really wanted to make it to Canada, as did my brother before he had to go back to school. And I feel like I was more focused on the destination than enjoying this journey that we had. And I think after the acceptance of like, okay, we may not make it there, that's totally fine. A lot of those stressors went away. Um, and also it was just like my own impatience of like, man, we are very slow. I would like to go a lot faster. Um, Kind of also waiting for my brother all the time. Eventually got on both of our nerves, Young and I. But once they were able to get their bearings and like get their legs, um, cycling legs. We just like coasted through, and yeah, we did well after that, after like a month.
Okay, cool. Um, Obviously, slowing down at the beginning didn't help towards the end of the film. Your brother had to leave early.
Mhm.
Where did he leave from? And do you feel like he is bummed that he didn't make it? Is it something that he wants to go back and do? Would you go back and do it with him? Like, what's sort of the dynamic on that whole experience of him, being there for two
Yeah.
months and then not being able to cross the finish line?
Yeah, I could tell that he was pretty bummed. He already missed like 2 weeks of school. It was high school. I personally was like, he should just miss another week, when my parents weren't about it. Um, he was bummed, but I
He
think
made it into
after
Montana, right?
Yeah, actually, we
Okay.
left from Missoula.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so he flew out of Missoula Airport. So there wasn't much left, I think it's like 200 or some 300, something like that. Um, but I think he didn't really care as much. After he saw the film, he was like, "Oh wow, okay, yeah, it's just a sign. It's just a sign there. It doesn't really mean much. He did all of the hardest parts with us. Um, and yeah, the last couple 100 miles were just pretty easy. So,
Yeah.
I think after knowing that, he was like, "Oh, okay."
Well, if he watches this, not to, discredit his point, but it's not just a sign. I'm guessing I haven't ridden the divide, but what did it feel like? How was there what was your experience crossing the line? We can't really, you can
Yeah,
try to feel it in the
yeah, yeah,
film, but
yeah. Um,
Or were you just so happy to be done?
yeah, in a way, I was really happy to be done. Um, but also I was really excited to start working on the film as and look through all the footage. As an editor, that's just like my favorite thing to do. So just yeah, super stoked to like try to put all the
Yeah.
putting all the puzzle pieces together. I was really excited about that. Also, um, yeah, I'm trying to manifest these feelings again. But I was also really sad, as this was the most time since like childhood, since our like adolescence that I was able to spend so much time with Young, as we were kind of pursuing our own things, him in New York City as an actor and me, chasing mountains in the West. So yeah, it was bittersweet because I was like done with this trip, but I wasn't done hanging out with Young. I felt like we could have spent a lot more time together, even though we did. Yeah, I think those feelings, combination of all that, was how I felt.
And obviously his life has gotten somewhat busy, I'm guessing, in New York. Are you able to, you know, obviously this is something that probably can't be recreated, but go on other adventures together? Is this something that's ongoing you want to keep doing throughout your lives as sort of like a way to connect with each other? Or
Yeah, yeah, I think we want to do more, especially now he's financially set as a big time actor. Um, I think he definitely wants to. He has a lot. He spent like a decade like chasing after this acting dream. So he put off a lot of things that he wanted to do for this to accomplish his dream. And now that he has the resources, he definitely wants to get out there. Yeah, I guess I'm planning on going to Thailand with him to train in Muay Thai for maybe a month next year. But yeah, we still want to go on go on more adventures together for sure.
well, that'll be a different type of adventure, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess there's like a colloquial term that people say whenever you're riding or a really hard bike path. They say like, that either kicked my butt or kicked you in the teeth or something like that. You're gonna be, you know, avoiding actual feet to the face. So good luck with that. Um, well, Puck, it was great to have you. I want to give it a couple more minutes just if anybody else has any other questions. Um, I would love to just say thanks for your time, for the support that you've given adventure cycling. I hope that adventure cycling support was helpful to you in the creation of
Oh
this
yeah.
film, and sharing stories like yours is exactly is one of the tactics, of course, that adventure cycling is going to take to share that bike travel is, well, one, it's like in the chat comment says it's more than just pedaling a bike, or it's more than just finishing the line. You can
Mm.
feel so much more, and it's for everybody. It's for newbies who find a bike. It's for people who want to race. And I think that your story really highlights that perfectly. So thanks for sharing it with us.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I guess before any more questions, I'm just gonna drop the yeah, of course. Thank you all for being here as well in the audience. I'm just gonna drop the link in the chat. Please, yeah, feel free to watch it. I would like to ask that you don't share too much in the outside world, as I'm gonna be releasing it anyway next month. But yeah, please enjoy the film and can't can't wait to hear from you all. Yeah, I just want to appreciate Adventure Cycling, shout out them, as they really just let me do whatever I want with this film. And apparently that's really hard, um, to have 100% creative control when um, folks are providing you with resources. So I'm super appreciative of that, and such an incredible route that they made. It was awesome.
Will you be releasing the film on YouTube?
Yeah,
Okay,
it'll be on YouTube. I'm gonna be releasing it with like the typical bike packing, adventure cycling, bike packing routes, the Radavist. It'll be out
sure.
there. You'll see
Cool.
it.
Cool.